Welcome to Ask a Lawyer with the attorneys at Hepworth Holzer, life-changing law in Boise, Idaho. Today, it's Charles Hepworth. Charlie is universally recognized by fellow lawyers and clients as the leading Boise trial lawyer. No attorney in Idaho comes close to him for a record of success with medical malpractice cases. Charlie answers your questions about the law and how it affects you.
Charlie, what is medical malpractice?
Medical malpractice refers to cases where there is a belief that a doctor or a hospital employee has made an error while caring for a patient that has caused a significant injury. That's how I would define medical malpractice.
Okay, so why won't an attorney take a medical malpractice case?
Yeah, so there are many answers to that question. I'd say the first thing that comes to mind is lack of familiarity with handling those cases. They're a very specialized form of case. They require the attorney to be familiar with all the law in the jurisdiction where the case arises, and the average personal injury attorney would not likely handle a medical malpractice case. Just lack of familiarity would be the first thought that comes to mind. Second things to come to mind is the cost of a medical malpractice case. The law requires that you prove the case through the testimony of expert witnesses, and those expert witnesses are typically hired by the law firm to provide testimony that is needed for the case. And the experts who agree to testify in medical malpractice cases are practicing physicians who charge significant amounts for their time spent dealing with a medical malpractice case where they're serving as an expert. So it is not at all unusual for the costs incurred in a medical malpractice case to be in the tens of thousands of dollars, if not more than $100,000. Those aren't the attorney's fees. Those are the out-of-pocket costs necessary to present the case. And so that cost barrier is significant. Most law firms aren't set up to handle those types of costs. And so that's probably the second thing that comes to mind as to why most lawyers won't handle a medical malpractice case. Third, I would probably then go to those cases have to be handled almost always on a contingent fee. Medical malpractice cases, at least in Idaho, don't typically settle early on. And so it's going to require a significant investment of time and money on the part of the law firm, and as well as the wherewithal and knowledge of how to handle the case. And so, again, it's financially problematic for most law firms where they're doing work that sometimes takes a couple of years without pay for the work, where at the same time you're advancing substantial financial resources to pay for the experts and the other litigation costs. So it's a financially very challenging arrangement for a lawyer and a law firm. So those are the most obvious, I think, hurdles that result in lawyers not handling medical malpractice cases.
Well, Charlie, let me ask you this then, in light of what you just said. Let's say I'm a victim of medical malpractice. Should I report it, and should I call an attorney?
Yeah, I definitely would encourage you to call an attorney if you feel that you've suffered a significant injury as a result of a medical or what you believe may well have been a medical error. I mean, I talk with people daily who have situations like that, and I don't charge anything for the time that I spend. I'd say there's a high percentage of those cases where, for some reason, I'm not able to offer my assistance with the case, but I always try to take the time to explain to the caller what is it about their particular situation that prevents me from being able to say that I can help with it. So I think it's good for the prospective client to have that conversation, learn why or why not the case lends itself or doesn't lend itself to the next step, which is hiring a lawyer. But it's a cost-free undertaking to contact a lawyer, have a conversation with the lawyer, learn what you can from that conversation, and then decide whether moving forward makes sense or not.
And should I do anything else like report it to the authorities or report it to the hospital, or how does that work?
Yeah, often I will advise people where I don't believe I can help them that the option that probably makes sense where they want to follow up in some fashion, there are, I think, two options. One is to contact the risk management office of the hospital and explain to the hospital what happened that has prompted them to feel that they have not been treated properly, and make the hospital aware of the problem. And perhaps the hospital will offer to write off the bill, or perhaps they'll offer some other resolution that makes sense. So calling the hospital, and by that I mean calling and asking for the risk management department of the hospital, because they're the department charged with the responsibility to handle situations from a patient who's dissatisfied. I think that can be beneficial. The next option, at least in Idaho, is to contact the Idaho Board of Medicine. And the Board of Medicine is a state agency that has two different services they offer for a situation like this. One is simply a service where if someone calls and complains about an experience they have, the Board of Medicine will conduct an investigation to determine whether action needs to be taken. The limitation of that service is that it's confidential. The complaining party won't be told what was done in the investigation or what the outcome of the investigation is. So it has that limitation. But again, it provides the dissatisfied patient with an opportunity to voice their complaint to the Board of Medicine, and to know that if the Board of Medicine investigates and decides to take disciplinary action against the physician, that's what the patient can do to set that process into motion. A second service that the Board of Medicine serves is if you are going to file a lawsuit against a doctor or a hospital, Idaho law requires that you start that process by filing a pre-litigation complaint with the Board of Medicine. So that's a process that's overseen by the Board of Medicine, and it's a required step in the process before you can actually file a lawsuit.
Thanks for listening to Ask a Lawyer with the attorneys at Hepworth Holzer, life-changing law in Boise, Idaho. Join us next time as they answer your questions about the law and how it affects you. They can be reached at 208-343-7510 or hepworthholzer.com.